Hello, I'm doing a update on this knife. I did one where I was trying to chop a coat hanger into. Um, as you can see, the chips from the coat hanger, I didn't take them out. I didn't grind them out. There was just something on there where I sharpened that, something white. But you can see that's a little chip right there. I've kind of got a lot of it grinded out. But what I did to this thing, and that I couldn't find a definite answer. Like I've never done a knife before, but I've been doing a lot of reading. I've watching videos, and I'd really like to start me some kind of a knife business. And I bought this knife, and just in case you're the first time you're watching this is made out of 52-100 steel, and what this is bearing steel. It's same steel that they, your wheel bearings. And look how long your wheel bearings last under heat, and of course, they're greased and everything under heat and stuff, and they last, over 100,000 miles a lot of times. So that tells you right there the steel has very good wear, potential. But this knife, when I first got it, like I said, I shared a video, and I hit a coat hanger, and it just it didn't even chip. It dented it. It dented the blade. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to send the knife back because I really like the knife. The handle is really nice. The company, as far as the company goes, they're not selling these knives as what they say hardness. They're saying they're 59 to 62 hardness, and that's just not the case with this knife. It was way too I'd cut through chicken or something, and by the time I get through 3 pieces, you could see where the blade of the sharpened edge, it would be folded over. So it definitely wasn't hardened like it. And I messaged the guy that sold it to me. It was the company. And I told him, and he's like, hey, we're sorry about that. Which I was going to keep the knife. I don't want no money back or anything. I like the knife. But me not being experienced with steel, and I have done a lot of research. So it didn't look like this when I first got it. You can tell that, there's different colors right in here. And all this splatter, it used to be polished real pretty. But I actually been using it. I've been cutting stuff. And I'll tell you now, like pepper juice, like green pepper juice, will actually turn your blade. That's what caused that. The acid from the vegetables is what causes all this. So it's not, if you're going to use this and it's nice and pretty when you first get it, it's not going to stay that way. But I kind of like the blue. That'll stay in it. But I kind of like the blue because that's what I did, and I'm going to explain that to you and why it's like that. What I did is I've watched enough videos on hardening steel, and hadn't done it myself, but I watched a lot of videos, and I did research from a lot of people that I'd seen, and I took all that information and put it together, and I watched. So, and this thing's very thick too, like the knife's very thick, but I mean, it's a really nice knife. It's real nice, and it was under $100. Heavy, very heavy. Like if you're weak armed, this is not the something you want to be chopping with, because it is heavy. When I first started using it, it wear my arm out. But anyway, get to what I did. It would not chop a thing, and I'm not going to chop a coat hanger in two. But what I am going to tell you that what I did to this thing, and you can tell the difference, and if I can keep this up here, you can tell the difference. Listen. That's the soft metal that I didn't harden. Now listen here. That's because this thing's tempered now. It's tempered right at the edge. And how I did that, and I did it with the handle one, and not very many people, I couldn't find anywhere that actually somebody was doing that. Because I was afraid to ruin the handle. It was going, melt the epoxy or do something like that. It did get hot up in here, about right in here. I just wrapped a towel around this part. And it didn't get hot enough to break the epoxy loose. And of course it's got the pins in it. And this thing here is just a decorative thing they put in it. But what I did is I heated that up with a torch is all I did. Not a cutting torch. It was just propane. and it took a long time to actually get that thing to actually heat up enough. It didn't turn all the way bright red. It was just under that stage. So I didn't like, it wasn't gleaming cherry red. But I did get it hot enough that, you know, when I stuck it, and I cooled it down, and I didn't cool it down in cold water. I made sure that the water was at the temp of like 120, 130 degrees is what I did. And I didn't want it too cold because of the research I'd done. Most people would heat their oil up or their water to make sure it wasn't freezing cold. So what the purpose of that is, I don't know, but this did work for me, and I used water. I didn't use oil. But I heated that edge, and I just kept running it back and forth, you know, and I could tell when it started to get hot because it didn't just start turning colors, it would almost look wet. And it would just kind of like look wet, and I heated it up and I just stuck it down into the water. Now, this thing is a lot sharper than it was when they sent it to me, and I don't know how they sharpen their knives. It was sharp, it would cut things, but it would not stay sharp for nothing. And but anyway, and what I was doing is to test this. I wasn't chopping no metal because I'm not going to, you know, use this on steel anyway. But what I did is, and I'm not even going to use it on wood. Of course, you know, if you're using chopping block, you're going to a butcher's block, you're going to be hitting your wood surface. But what I did is I just started shaving this, and it shaved this with no problem. Like, it was just shaving it off, and it was just flying everywhere. And then I went over and I just did this with it after doing that. So I couldn't do that before. Like, I could cut something small and the blade would be completely dull. And I know that bearing steel is some of the hardest steel that you can get. So, and you know, and I'm not a professional as far as you know, expert on steel, but I have done a lot of I do a lot of mechanic work, and bearing steel. When I started to get into this, I started thinking, wouldn't it be cool to make a bearing steel knife, because it would hold up, and well, when I started getting in this, I went over and I'm like, wonder if anybody's done that. So I went over, and of course everybody's making knives out of bearings. You know, they were forging them, and they were sharp. They held their edge. There's a lot of videos on there to where people were cutting stuff for a long period of time. 200 or 300 cuts, and the knife kept just cutting. It wouldn't dull. And then they went over and started slicing mild steel with it, and then went back over and started cutting a rope or whatever, and it was just going right through it. So I did do enough research to know that this stuff is actually good. It proved my thought that this stuff is really, really good steel. And that's why I bought this knife, and that's why I wanted to keep it. Because, yes, it wasn't good when I first bought it. It wasn't perfect or anything like that. And I didn't pay $300 or $400 for it. It was under $100 I paid. So, and I'm not standing by this company. So I'm not endorsing them at all. And I'm not even endorsing the knife. But I am endorsing the steel itself, you know, which is 52-100 bearing steel. I am endorsing that to be good knife steel. And maybe it ain't the best, but it definitely is going to do everything that you needed to do. I was actually splitting these things with it. Of course, that's a heavy knife. And I was actually splitting them down through it. And, you know, look how it went way down here. It's about right there was where the knife went down. And then I walked over, and then I got my piece of paper. After doing all that, and I can't really hold nothing up. But anyway, and it shaved right through this like it was a razor blade. So it's just a piece of paper. It shaved right through that just like nothing. So, you know, I like the knife, and I'm going to keep the knife, and I am going to get into knife making. I want to make some custom knives, and I want to make the custom handles. Of course, this one's, you know, kind of unique. It's pretty neat. But knives that you can use, and you don't have to sharpen every time you go to cut a piece of chicken or you do that, because that's just nerve-wracking. Maybe, you know, you don't know much about knives, and all you do is maybe cut a few things. If it's dull, you throw it in a drawer, and then you just grab another knife. Maybe that's you. But I'm telling you here now that you don't have to do that. All you got to do is buy a good hardened steel. And that's what I'm going to get into. So hopefully here soon I'll start doing some videos on me hardening some steel and me making my custom knobs and some custom handles. So I'm just getting into this, but I'm just a builder. That's who I am. I build stuff. It's either cars or I'm just restoring something, some old antique something. It's just what I do. It's in my nature. And I enjoy it. It gives you a lot of self-pride and everything. And this is something I've always wanted to do. Maybe I'll get around to making a sword or two. But I am going to stick to knives that I can actually use in the kitchen. Because I like to cook too. But I don't like cutting deer meat or steak or something like that. Or you're butchering something and you constantly, your blade's going dull. I do not like it whatsoever. As you can see, it's... I do cook some. This is my homemade chili. It's got chicken in it. It's canned. Turned out real good, spicy. But I like to cook. I like to do things. I just like to do things. It's just in my nature. I've always been that way. Started out when I was a little kid. I used to overhaul weed eaters, and I overhauled bicycles. I overhauled lawnmowers. And I've kind of gotten away from that, and I overhaul cars, and I work on cars, fix cars, and I build, turbo cars, with turbochargers and all that stuff. But this is one of my next projects, the thing, my hobby that I want to get into. But I also like to get good enough to where I can sell a few of them and, not really do a business, but, just show people what I can do and sell them, for a decent price, not overpriced like a lot of the knives are. If I can stay within the range I paid for this one, which was under $100, and it would be this size, I'd be happy with that. And it would be hardened like it's supposed to be hardened, not say it's hardened and then you get it cut a few times and then all of a sudden, your knife's dull again. I don't like that. If I don't mind spending the money as long as it's going to do what you say it's going to do, and it's what it is what you say it is. So I hope this helps, and I hope, you can give me some advice, some steel to go with other than this, because once I get into it, I'll try a different steel. But I like something that's not as corrosive. I like this because it's nice and smooth, even though it looks really bad like this. It's real nice and smooth. Down here where I even sharpened it and tempered it, nice and smooth. I even like the collar. The collar is pretty cool. I like how it turns the bluish. And maybe I'll repolish up in here a little bit, kind of get this out. But it's going to be a knife I use in the kitchen. It's not going to be something I'm going to take out and chop trees down on with it. But it does do now what it's supposed to. It does cut paper like it's, just not butter. And it'll split wood, do whatever. And you don't have to sharpen it every time. And it'll still slice through paper. So I hope you liked the video. Like and subscribe. And when I get up and going, and I'm going to build me a forge, a gas forge. And once I get up and going, I'll do some more videos of my knives.